Subscribe, guys, for the latest in boxing. Guys, I was thinking the other night about what would happen if Tyson Fury actually managed to pull the upset and beat and dethrone Deontay Wilder. Because if that were to happen, a lot of things would have changed. A lot of things would change. First of all, that would absolutely ruin the Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua fight. Because the only reason people want to see this fight is because they're both undefeated and they're both champions. If Wilder were to lose, he will no longer be undefeated and he will no longer be a champion. And the fact that Wilder is not accepting a $15 million payday, if he were to lose that belt to Tyson Fury, Eddie Hearn will offer him more than half than what he originally offered him. Because if Wilder felt that $15 million was just too little for him, imagine what he's gonna say if Eddie Hearn then says, I'm gonna offer you just $2 million because you're no longer the WBC champion of the world. So that fight would be completely dead because Wilder wouldn't accept a fight with AJ because he wouldn't accept the money that Eddie Hearn is offering him, because he didn't accept the money that Eddie Hearn was offering him when he was the WBC champion. So that fight right there, Wilder versus AJ, would be absolutely ruined. Wilder would probably feel like he made the worst decision of his life because he could have taken a fight with Dillian Whyte and then Anthony Joshua instead, made way more money, but he chose to lose to Tyson Fury. Now, if that were to happen, I would have to definitely give Tyson Fury a lot of credit, just for the simple fact that Tyson Fury was able to beat Wilder coming off a 3-year layoff, being on drugs, having to lose a bunch of weight. So that right there would be impressive if he's able to beat Deontay Wilder being so inactive and having to lose all this weight and having to, basically go into a world championship fight without being properly prepared, because he didn't fight guys to basically bring him back to his best self, or at least the best version he could possibly be at leading up to this fight. So that would be impressive if he's able to beat Deontay Wilder. Secondly, everybody will be talking about Fury versus Anthony Joshua then, 100%. Because there's already a beef there. There's already a history. I remember before Anthony Joshua became a champion. No, I remember when Anthony Joshua became a champion, Tyson Fury was going around saying, he's not the real champion, talking a bunch of trash about Anthony Joshua, saying that, the only reason he became a champion was because, he got stripped and all this stuff. And there's some beef there between Fury fans and Joshua fans. A lot of Fury fans believe that Fury is still the true heavyweight champion of the world, while there's other Joshua fans who feel that, no, it's actually Joshua, which is true. Joshua is realistically the heavyweight champion of the world. Fury never lost his belts, but Joshua had no control that Fury got stripped of his title, so you can't blame Joshua for that. So there'll be a lot of there's a rivalry there, and that would be the fight that everybody will be talking about. People would pretty much forget about Deontay Wilder, because I'm telling you right now, if Wilder were to lose to Tyson Fury, Wilder's already perceived as a hype job. Like, people perceive him as a hype job. Why? Because of his resume. That's basically it. It's his resume that has people thinking he's a hype job. It's his resume. They look at his resume, they see it's shit. They see he doesn't have the best quality opposition in his resume. So if he were to lose to Tyson Fury, people would look at that like, wow, the minute he fights a guy who was legit at one point in his career, Tyson Fury, when he was in shape, he loses. So that would not look good when it comes to Deontay Wilder. It definitely wouldn't look good if he loses to this version of Tyson Fury. Like, if he were to lose to, like, say he would have fought Tyson Fury after, like, 3 months after Fury beat Wladimir Klitschko, people would probably still say that Wilder's a hype job, but it wouldn't look as bad as losing to this version, because at least that version of Tyson Fury was active, and he had just came off a schooling over Wladimir Klitschko, so people would be like, okay, he lost to a guy who beat Wladimir Klitschko, so clearly Tyson Fury is really good. But it would kind of look bad if Wilder were to lose to this version of Tyson Fury, because this is a guy who, like I said, very inactive, gained a lot of weight, drug problems. So that would not really look good. And by the way, I would say the same thing about Anthony Joshua. Let's say Joshua was fighting Fury next, and he were to lose to Joshua. That would not make look good for Anthony Joshua, because he just lost to a guy coming off a 3-year layoff. And like I said, it will make Wilder look bad, and it would really make, if you think about it though, it would really make Tyson Fury look good, because like, damn, you could come off a 3-year layoff, gain a lot of weight, lose a lot of weight, be on drugs, and still come back and beat a champion at world level. That right there is kind of impressive if you really think about it. Tyson Fury has gone around claiming that he could beat Wilder and Joshua with his hands tied behind, with one hand tied behind his back. I don't know how true that is. Well, I know he can't. He'll probably have a better chance doing that against Wilder, though, than someone like Joshua, because Wilder's really like a guy that you just really have to worry about his right hand. But if I'm Tyson Fury, I would fight the way I normally fight. Like, I think Fury should fight a savvy boxer's fight. Have Wilder, thinking, have him going after you. Because I think if Fury decides to, fight the way he fought Steve Cunningham, come forward like that, I think that's a recipe for disaster. I think he would get knocked out cold, because that's what Deontay Wilder wants. He wants you to be right in front of him so he could land his right hand. But when Wilder's in there with a mobile guy and a guy who moves, it's frustrating for him. It's difficult for him to land. Again, look at Artur Szpilka. Artur Szpilka was making it very difficult for Deontay Wilder to land properly on Artur Szpilka because of his movement. Even when you throw a jab in Wilder's face, Wilder tends to freeze. Like when he fought Gerard Washington, Gerard Washington was just throwing a jab on his face, and Wilder just had his hands up. It's like Wilder was intimidated by getting counter. Like, he knew if he let his hands go, if he tried to attack, he would. Washington was trying to set him up with a hook or a counter, so he was just very hesitant to let his hands go. That's another thing I noticed about Wilder. When you throw a jab in his face, he tends to not let his hands go enough. He just covers up, and that's why a lot of times Wilder actually gives away rounds. Excuse me, not fights, rounds. How many times have you seen Wilder, in the behind on the scorecards, and then he eventually is able to land his right hand? And the reason this happens is because a lot of times he's not willing to let his hands go, because he's afraid of what's coming back if he actually lets his hands go and he gets countered by his opponent. He did it against Luis Ortiz. He did it against Gerard Washington. Even against Artur Szpilka. He kind of gets intimidated, and then eventually, once he realizes he's behind on the scorecards, then he starts, letting his hands go. Then he starts taking more risks. That's one thing I will say about Wilder. He'll give away the first 6 rounds, but then he'll try and land a punch, because he knows, okay, I got to try to get the guy out of here. When it comes to Fury, I've always felt that a prime Fury would be very, a very bad style matchup for someone like Wilder, because Wilder, like I said, when he's in there with savvy boxers, he has problems. And I always felt that Wilder's only chance against a prime Fury would be if he was able to land his right hand. I would be thinking to myself, I think Fury could win on points, but if Wilder's able to land on Fury and he's able to hurt Fury, then Wilder could definitely stop Fury. That's how I felt when Fury was active. That's how I felt back then. If Wilder's able to land, he might be able to beat him, because if he hurts him, then he could finish him off, right? Now, this version of Fury is a lot slower. He looked a lot slower when he fought in his last fight against Surfer. or whatever his name is, he looked visibly slower, and it's because he was 30 pounds heavier. Since he's slower, it's going to be harder for him to evade punches, because normally he's able to, he's a savvy boxer. He's able to move, slip inside, slide, and he's able to literally. That's why people call him, I've seen people call him the Mayweather of the heavyweight division, at least when he was active. It's because he's able to slip and slide and basically do shoulder rolls and roll under these punches. But because he's 30 pounds heavier than he was when he was active, he's slower, and it's more harder for him to evade the punches, and it's easier for his opponents to land. So this is why I think, because I have a big feeling that Fury is going to try to fight the way he knows. Because Fury isn't, and in my opinion, even though Fury talks a lot of crap, but I think Fury is an intelligent fighter, because he knows about styles. When he fought Steve Cunningham, he fought on the inside because he knew that Cunningham was a boxer. So what did he do? He basically fought a smothering type of fight. He was all up in Cunningham's face because he knew that that's how you beat boxers. You smother them. You basically walk them down, and he walked down Steve Cunningham. Yet when he fought Wladimir Klitschko, totally different style. He knew that Wladimir Klitschko, because Wladimir Klitschko is a technician, he knew that the way to beat technicians is to force them to come after you, take them out of their, comfort zone. Look at Juan Manuel Marquez. Marquez was a guy that was a counterpuncher. Whenever guys came forward against him, he would look really sensational, right? He'll catch people. Look at how many times he caught Manny Pacquiao flesh. But when he fought Mayweather, he was forced to come forward because Mayweather was the boxer. He forced Marquez to come after him, and he looked poor when he was doing that, because that's not what he's used to doing. He's good at being the counterpuncher, not at being the aggressive fighter. When it comes to Klitschko normally does his best when a guy comes after him, because when a guy comes after him, what does Klitschko do? Or when a guy is standing right in front of him, what does he do? He sticks a jab in his face, and he stops the guy right in his track. And then he throws, a left hook, a right hand, an uppercut, and then he'll lean, jab, and then he'll lean on the guy. So when Tyson Fury was moving and playing the savvy boxer, he was forcing Klitschko to go after him, because Klitschko, like I said, he prefers his opponents to be either coming forward against him or just standing in front of him, so he could throw that jab and basically control his opponent with that jab in their face. But when he had Fury moving around like that and forcing him to go after him, it took him out of his comfort zone, because he knew that the only way he was going to be able to be successful against Fury would be if he became the aggressor. And the problem with Wladimir Klitschko is he was never a fighter that walked fighters down. He was never like a Mike Tyson. He was never a guy that came forward and try and knock somebody's head off. He was more of a technician. So when you fight that type of style that Fury fight against Wladimir Klitschko, against a technician, that's a kryptonite for them, because they're not used to being aggressive fighters like Gennady Golovkin or something like that. Because the way to beat a style like that, like Tyson Fury, is to be aggressive against him. So that's why he looks so bad against Tyson Fury, because Wladimir Klitschko is a really good fighter, really good technical fighter, but he's not a good, fighter, and he's not a good type of fighter that knows how to cut the ring off and, stalk his opponent the way Gennady Golovkin does, or Mike Tyson did. That's not his style. So I believe it's kind of like Wilder. Wilder is not necessarily, Wilder, a lot of people compare him to Mike Tyson. They say because he's a big puncher. But he fights nothing like Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was very aggressive in his prime. He was an aggressive fighter who would cut the ring off on his opponents. Deontay Wilder doesn't fight like that. He's not he's a guy that he is more like a sharpshooter. But you never see Deontay Wilder walking an opponent down. You never see him, throwing left hooks. He depends more on straight punches, down the pipe, because first of all, he's tall and he's lanky. So, and he knows that's how he gets his full power, basically extending his hands. So he's more of a guy that he's willing to play chess with his opponent. If his opponent's standing right in front of him, he knows that he will eventually land his right hand. So you see him, he looks like he looks very confident, and he tries to land that right hand on his opponent, right? But then he'll be giving away rounds because he's afraid of getting countered. But he knows in the back of his mind that he will eventually land a right hand on his opponent. But when he is forced to chase an opponent, he doesn't really look good chasing an opponent. Like he does good. I don't think Wilder's good at cutting off the ring. This is why I've always felt that Fury, if he's able to move and be savvy, he'll be able to outbox Deontay Wilder. But that's a big if. Like I said, I think it's going to be easier for Deontay Wilder to land on Fury. I think Fury is going to... I wouldn't be surprised if Fury wins some rounds. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually wins a couple of rounds. But I think that eventually it's going to be a case where Fury might actually win some rounds, but then he gets caught with a right hand, and then he gets hurt because Fury, I don't think he ever had the best chin. When Fury was getting dropped by guys who weren't punchers, he got dropped by Cunningham, he got dropped by several other fighters who weren't necessarily big punchers. So Wilder could definitely knock out Fury, 100%. He could definitely knock out Fury if he lands on him. And I just think when you have a active heavyweight like Deontay Wilder, even though because Fury is technically a better fighter than Deontay Wilder, but he hasn't been active. And I just think that inevitably he's going to get hit with that right hand. And the thing about Wilder, he's a killer. And when he hurts you, he goes for broke. So it might be a case where he beats Fury after losing a few rounds and knocks him out. And then people are going to go around claiming that Deontay Wilder's the real heavyweight champion of the world, as always. But, that's for another video. Anyway, guys, it's kind of a lengthy video, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed.